All right, we are live with Green Cabbage's Chopping It Up LinkedIn Live session. I'm Natalie Plastro, Head of Marketing at Green Cabbage, and I'm joined here today by CEO Eric Cunningham. Welcome to Chopping It Up.
Thanks, Nat. I'm looking forward to chopping it up.
Yeah, so this is the second in our series of Chopping It Up with Green Cabbage, and really the purpose of these sessions are just to put together 15-minute informational live interactive sessions with our audience. Today's session is going to be all about supplier strategy. So, Eric, you know best. You've worked at a lot of these suppliers in the past. Can you give us a little bit of background about what today's session is going to be about and really what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so everybody has a game plan, right? Whether you're a supplier and you're calling on a certain customer across the globe of all industries, and you have to also have one if you're a client, right? So these ERP negotiations are once every 3 to 5 years. These telco refreshes are once every 3 to 5 years, but you have to understand the mindset of one another, right? And suppliers do an excellent job to understand, the strategy going into it. So, the first thing I would say is the best sales reps for these mega suppliers, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, et cetera, cover the biggest accounts, right? So when accounts get reshuffled at the end of every year, the senior vice president of whatever industry or business unit says, I know there's a big opportunity coming up with these accounts, and these are the folks that I want to put on those accounts. So my best salespeople, right? So you've got to be able to understand what's going on and what their approach is leading up to how they're going to approach your account and what type of proposal and strategy that they're going to have. Good so far?
Yeah, I mean, what are some of the internal tactics, kind of getting into the mind of the supplier, um, how they're set to call on their prospects? How does that affect their mindset in the negotiation as well?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about alignment, and alignment is no different from a supplier. So a supplier wants to, if you're, a mega supplier, you work with your leadership team to do a lot of white spacing and org chart discussions. So who's who within that client? Who's the CFO? Who's going to sign this deal? Who's the chief procurement officer? Who's their first lieutenants and second lieutenants that I'm going to work with? Who's the business owner of the technology and who's going to consume the technology that we're selling, right? And then you have the CIO, right, who is a focal point of these discussions. And then how do I, as a supplier, how do I dissect who's on my side, who's an influencer, who's the decision maker, what's that process look like? So there's a lot of behind the scene conversations that are going on. And ultimately my job as a supplier is to find out who my champion is. Where can I get my intel?
Yeah.
How's that intel going to impact or change or reflect on my strategy and the proposal that I've gotten put in place today?
Yeah.
So,
And I think looking at the reverse of that, being on the side of the client, once you've had that contact with your supplier, they know what they need to get done to hit their quota. But what are some of the things that, from the client side, they need to be taking a look at to make sure that both sides have this mutually beneficial partnership?
yeah, I'll go back to the word alignment. Alignment is so critical. So isolating the supplier to a certain communication channel is the first thing that they need to do, because, again, as a supplier, you're taught to call high and wide, right? And again, they're putting their best people in there. Their best people have three characteristics that you can take to the bank. First of all, they're likable, you can trust them, and there's going to be value. Like when they're going to talk, you're going to see these are professional salespeople that have done hundreds, if not thousands, of deals. So on the supplier side of it, you have to isolate and get ahead of that by saying, this is your point of contact. All communications need to go through this channel. And then internally, you need to unpack that with the stakeholders, the CIO, the CPO, the CFO, right? So some of these deals, like we've done last quarter, 200, 300, we've $300 million deals.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about 2 points on a $300 million deal or a point on a $100 million deal, so some of this is significant. So you have to have an alignment and on the client side as well.
Right. I mean, alignment is so important, but then having the expertise to complement that as well. I think it's something that we talk about at Green Cabbage all the time. And a lot of the time, what we see with our clients is they're coming up with these negotiations with these suppliers once a year, once every 3 years, sometimes once every 5, whatever the case may be. And yes, we fully believe that their teams are experienced, but before we get into the critical items that we'd like to take a look at, how is having that backing, that expertise from someone who's seen this mass deal volume able to change the outcome of the negotiation?
Yeah, from the supplier side, they have all the resources at their disposal. So they have, number one, they'll have engineering. Number 2, they'll have sales leadership. Number 3, they'll have a deal desk. Number 4, they'll have a value creation team, and then the proposal team. So when you're talking large deals, these are the deals that the suppliers are going to list, on their quarterly earnings call.
Yeah.
Right? So, and by the way, whether it's a big deal or a small deal, it's similar strategies. And small deals, range. Everyone has their own definition of small, but I would say, ideally, if it's $2.5 million or more, on a deal, that's on the chief revenue officer's forecast, right? He or she is looking at that saying, I need that deal for the quarter, right? What do you need from me in order to go get that deal? What do you need from me so I don't have churn on this annual recurring revenue here? And what products do I need to pack that back in there to get that, so that churn doesn't go below 20% or whatever the case. So keep that in mind. There's a whole team behind it. You might be interfacing with one individual, but rest assured that that individual has the support of a professional team.
Right. And I think it's just especially important to have organizations like Green Cabbage in place, just to share kind of what we've seen with the deals that come in, to be able to speak on this organizational structure, to be able to know what's going on within the mindset of the supplier, because we've seen so many deals, right? We have this expertise. We see 30, 60 of these deals come in a month, whereas our clients get 1 a year. And from that, we're just kind of able to put together this ranking and then go from there, right? What do we know needs to be held within the agreement? Which kind of takes me into our next question and talking about the 5 critical items that Green Cabbage addresses during the negotiation.
Yeah, this is a great illustration, by the way. I think we did a lot more than that in 22, but what I would tell you is the 5 critical items is, the first thing is, and let me beam back up. What we're out to secure is not the best pricing, not the best terms. It's the best contract, right? So there's the art of negotiation of every category that's out there today. But typically what we're doing is we're looking at 5 critical work streams here. The first thing is business terms. It's apparent that you have to understand how the technology is going to be utilized, right? Who's going to utilize it, where it's going to be utilized, and understanding the licensing models that are at your disposal. So we talk all the time internally, how many different ways can you license an Oracle database? How many different ways can you license a Workday user, right? So that's so important that you ask the right questions to the supplier, or to the client, our clients, and they understand that, because that does impact things, because there's mousetraps set all through these agreements.
Yeah.
We'll talk about mousetraps here soon. Then the next day, are you going to say something, Matt?
No, I was just let's follow up on mousetraps in a minute here.
We'll follow up on mousetraps. Legal terms. Especially, we work with a lot of private equity companies, and whether you're private equity or not private equity, you still need the flexibility of divesting, assignment, buffers, M&A buffers, limitation of liability. We work with a lot of customers, usually when it gets limitation of liability and indemnification, their legal team's holding the deal up because they want better terms. It's where we kind of have the answers to the test and say, hey, we've seen deals 8 times larger than this that haven't seen those terms. That kind of gives them a sanity check to say, okay, well, maybe we are getting the best that we can get from the supplier. So it takes a deal from 90 days to 10 days or less.
Yeah.
The renewal piece of it, doing the current contracts, great. But 90% of our customers don't have renewal caps in their contracts.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how you're going to forecast your financial business partner internally to say, hey, I'm not picking on suppliers, but Splunk, and Okta, and Alteryx agreement doesn't have a renewal cap in it. Well, they can make that renewal price whatever they want at that point. Right. So that's critical as well too. Pricing, I have as number 4, right? Pricing for us it's easy to get to, right? Because we've got a massive, extensive market intelligence for pricing. But current pricing on the current order, but also you want to make sure you set yourself up for future pricing as well too.
Right.
It coincides with the renewal cap. And then, when you get those 4 items done, you want to look at what the competitive landscape is.
Right.
And we're not waiting for the deal a week for the deal to get signed. We're looking at things in advance because it's important for our clients to know what's the competitive pricing compared to what they're paying. Because they might want to consider that. Maybe it's today, or maybe they say, okay, I'm not going to do a 3-year deal. I'm going to do a 1-year deal because I see that there's competitive pricing out there that is 20% less, and it's going to be able to provide the same, if not better, value that I'm getting from my existing supplier.
Yeah. I mean, you talk a lot about getting ahead of things. When would you say is the optimal time to start that renewal strategy and start addressing those?
Yeah, so in our platform, we tag things 6 months in advance. And depending on the size of the transaction and the volume of deals that the client's working on, it can vary. But, we want to make sure that we start a strategy conversation specifically on, we'll call it our mega spend in the platform, and then some on the tail spend as well too, 6 months in advance.
Right. Now, one thing, I know we said we were going to talk about mousetraps, but can you elaborate a little bit about how those are hidden, maybe in the business and legal terms?
Yeah. So you started the call off. We have a lot of folks here that worked at technology companies and in a variety of different roles, some even that created these pricing and packaging options. And, agreements, when a supplier gives you an agreement, that's their standard agreement. You're getting the same agreement that everyone else is getting across the board. You're not lucky enough to get a non-standard agreement out of the gate. So those standard agreements have mousetraps written all through them. There'll be things like auditing, right? It's a big topic that's going on in the market today.
Especially this year.
There'll be things like licensing definitions. There'll be things like auto renewal. There'll be things like limitations around other things like divestiture assignment.
Yeah.
So depending on the supplier, we know exactly where those mousetraps are. So you'll hand us a standard Oracle CSA. We know 25 areas to look at right out of the gate to come back. We call those mousetraps. And the mousetraps we call them for a reason is most of those mousetraps don't get uncovered. And you'll get in midstream of a deal or of a term, and next thing you know, you go back and say, I wish I would have done that because it's really impacting my business.
Yeah.
Rebalancing license, termination in favor, chronic unavailability, right? Price holds.
Those renewal caps too.
Renewal caps.
Go unnoticed, yeah.
And what happens is clients get so busy that they don't have that blueprint in front of them to go check all their boxes, because then the supplier puts them up against the ropes and says, hey, if you don't sign this deal, we're gonna suspend your license.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a testament to getting in front of things 6 months in advance, right?
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Great conversation. I think one last thing to kind of wrap things up. Can we talk just a little bit about how Green Cabbage is able, maybe some of the outcomes that Green Cabbage has been able to utilize through this, just to give a little bit of background about who we are, what we do, and how we do it?
Yeah, do you have a slide that shows how we differentiate?
Absolutely.
The first thing is data and data distribution. So we've built a platform that's based on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure where sensitive data and data privacy we take very serious here. So how you transmit data and protection within your organization. Second one is market intelligence. We're using realized data, which we de-identify, so no customers' names on it or any of that stuff. And that's kind of where we have the answers to the test, and we repurpose a lot of what we've learned. We actually have attorneys on staff here that can help you with customized language that's specifically de-risk you and your organization based on your business requirements. Benchmarking, a lot of customers of ours are in a reactive mode, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't put them in a bigger hole. So we move at a pace that we've never seen. So we're doing benchmarks at a micro SKU level. So if it's a bundle, which everybody's going to, and you might not need all the SKUs in that bundle, we're going to tell you every SKU in that bundle and what the value of that SKU is.
Yeah.
Do that within 24 to 48 hours. Negotiations. Listen, we're going to stand behind what we're talking about here. We're going to pick the phone up and call the executives of these companies, and we're going to that phone call is going to merit you another few points, as you can see here, T's and C's, and then of course our guarantee. So didn't want to make this a sales pitch. I want to make this more of an informative session, but we have what we call Amen Corner of technology suppliers end of year. Those of you that are familiar with the Masters, April 6th, I think they teeing it off down there. We call that Amen Corner. So you got Oracle's end of the year in May. You got Microsoft's end of the year in June, followed up by Cisco's in July. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to focus on here, and we're here to help you if you need the support.
Yeah. Just to wrap things up, final thoughts. If anyone has any questions, comments, posted a link in the chat of this LinkedIn Live session. Feel free to drop us some questions and we'll have someone get back to you relatively quickly. But it's been an honor to have founder and CEO of Green Cabbage, Eric Cunningham, on this week's session of Chopping It Up with Green Cabbage.
You're the best, Nat. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.